This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here getting better every day to help you be happy, healthy, and wealthy. And what we're going to be talking about today, the gentleman I'm bringing on, he is definitely going to bring that because he's got a really cool book coming out. He has a really interesting background, and it all revolves around this idea of confidence, which you know I'm a huge fan of. I can't wait to dive into this. Paul Epstein is a highly accomplished sports executive with extensive experience in the NFL and NBA. He has achieved remarkable success in breaking revenue records for the Super Bowl, overseeing the construction of a billion-dollar stadium, and establishing the San Francisco 49ers Talent Academy. Additionally, he is known as the Why Coach and has delivered impactful speeches as a renowned keynote speaker. Paul has worked with companies and sports teams, including Amazon, Disney, NASA, and the LA Lakers. Paul, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, JM, fired up to be here, man.
Well, I'm fired up to have you. I'm a huge sports guy. I can't say I'm a huge 49ers fan because I am a Packers fan, but what you oversaw, brother, that construction of that amazing, beautiful Levi, is it still Levi Stadium? I can't keep up, but
yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know well, as a Packers fan, you know that it's crazy because most of the league, there's this corporate connection and corporate tie and a more traditional ownership base. And I mean, what y'all are doing in Green Bay is pretty phenomenal, man. How authentic, how true it's been. And yeah, you might leave a couple bucks on the table, but at the end of the day, I think fan owned, the authenticity. I mean, it's a ride or die group. So any excuse to get a Lambo is a good deal.
Yeah, it's unique. There's no doubt about it. But brother, I just ask you, how did you get into, because literally if my son is listening, he will be fired up to be like, oh, Dad, that's exactly what I want to be when I grow up, a sports executive. How did you get into this? What was the path, brother?
For sure. And I'm going to tie it back. What's your son's name, by the way?
So Tristan or TJ?
All right, let's go TJ because my son's name is PJ. So let's go TJ. So I have good news for TJ in that it is a much easier, more accessible game to get into today than it was a couple decades ago when I got in. Because nowadays, let's say you're in college, you could study sports management. Most major universities can prep you not to be the athlete, but to be in the front office. And that's the side of the coin that I was always on. And so for TJ and for others listening in that maybe it's a mid-career pivot, it's accessible, it's there, it's available, and people know how to do it. Back then, it was a little bit of dumb luck. So here's my backstory on how I officially got my break and my foot in the door. So if you're a sports fan, a lot of us know of the name Mel Kiper. So NFL draft guru, right? And you know, he's the high energy, like this is literally how he talks, right? So coming out of school, undergrad USC, studied business, sales, and marketing. That was always kind of the lane that I was in. So I worked for a Fortune 10 company, outside territory sales manager. I'm driving in a cool Dodge Caravan. And one day I got it on ESPN radio and Mel Kiper comes on. And this infomercial changed the trajectory of my entire career. Mel comes on. Have you ever wanted to work in sports? Have you ever dreamed of your favorite NFL, NBA, MLB? Yes, yes, yes. And I'm speeding down the highway. And he says, call 1-800-SMWW now. That stands for Sports Management Worldwide. I gave them a jingle. 8 weeks later, after an online course, I impressed the faculty. They said, where do you want to be? I said, LA. They said, what do you want to do? I said, sell. They said, great. We know some folks at the Clippers. I said, no. You mean the Lakers? They said, no, the Clippers. You don't exist at the Lakers, my friend. They don't need you. And that was in the Kobe and Shaq era. And, you know, they're stacking up the chips. So long story short, it was an ESPN infomercial that got my foot in the door. And I left a six-figure opportunity to make $7 an hour. That is my break into sports. I wish it was more glorious. Let me actually add a little insult to injury as well. a year before I started, ESPN called the LA Clippers the worst brand in sports. My second week on the job, front cover of Sports Illustrated, title, the worst franchise in sports history. And it had a picture of 3 Clippers fans with bags over their head. Try selling that. By the way, one of the bags on the forehead, it said, just shoot me. So, hey, man, that's how I got my break. I could continue the journey, but that is literally how it all started.
You know what? I love that. And here's why. It's the real. It's true. That's you don't get to where Paul is at today without climbing the ladder. It just doesn't work that way. I love the Dodge Caravan. I remember that article, and this was pre-Balmer. So this was
for sure. Donald
yes.
Sterling. No, which is
you.
a lot of the brand stuff. Look, there's a reason he's no longer the owner. I'll just leave it at that. Okay. Like, yeah, like they were not just throwing daggers. Like there was a lot of truth to it, man. In the building with Kobe and Shaq across the hall, we were the redheaded stepchild and we knew it, right? Like AEG owns the building, the LA Kings, same ownership group. At the time, they had a stake in the Lakers as well. We were the other guys. But again, Paul didn't exist at the Lakers. And you get in where you get in. And here's the beauty. And I think this is a lesson for our entire community that we're talking to right now. I wouldn't have had it any other way, because for me, this turned out to be the birthplace and the breeding ground for how do you play offense in a defensive environment. Defense is adversity, setbacks, hurdles, obstacles, uncontrollable circumstances. Everybody listening deals with defense. We live in a defensive world. So we have a choice. How do we want to play? And if it, like for me, I had no control over wins and losses at the time on the court and then eventually on the field. I had zero control over that. But we had numbers to hit. We had results. We had goals. We had people's careers in our hands. And so for us to think about that, you got to perform. And you can't control what you're selling in this case. And I think that's a beautiful lesson because it really cuts your teeth to be the underdog. Mm-hmm. You know, like when I was in the Bay at the time, the Niners, so they were good before I got there. They were good after I left. So I don't know, maybe I'm the black cat, who knows? But regardless, when I was at the Niners, we were losing a lot of games and the Warriors were winning a lot of games. And I remember my buddies who were over there and they would always floss all their revenue trophies. And I was like, oh, that's cool, bro. You picked up an incoming call. That's awesome. Good for you. You know, like you got to earn this, man. And so like for me, my career accelerated quickly because I always sold the underdog. I didn't want to get that incoming call. Sure, better commission, but besides the money side of it, I actually think you'll grow as a person. If you're selling beverages, don't make my first job Coca-Cola. I don't want that. I want to sell the can that says cola on it. You know, like I want to do that. And I want people to say like, who are you? And I want to win that battle. So that's a little bit of the spirit behind those early days.
Well, and I maybe this ties in. I love the sign behind you. It says Win Monday. For those that aren't seeing Paul on screen, obviously, let's go win. I'm a huge fan of the word win. And it's not just about wins and losses. It's about what you said. How do you play offense when you're constantly getting hammered with things outside of your control? So how do you, brother? How do you literally wake up and show up in offense, show up positively, if you will? Because I imagine just your personality, the way you looked at it, like, don't give me Coca-Cola, give me the cola or the tab or whatever the brand
Shasta.
is.
Yeah, whatever.
Shasta, give me that. You know, obviously you're not afraid of a challenge, and yet you have this zest, I guess is what I'll say. So tell me about Win Monday. Does that tie into everything we're talking about?
Totally. So that's the name of my community, my podcast. So Win Monday. And look, I'm like you, brother. We're kindred spirits. And like, I think where we both get out of bed is let's win one day, one decision, one action at a time. Like every day there's a reset button. If yesterday was a loss, cool. No losing streaks, right? Like learn, pick yourself up, adapt, evolve, you know, like it's that spirit of, and for me, Monday was very particular. It wasn't just win any day. the key to Monday is we live in a world of TGIF. Everyone fantasizes about Friday. I want to be around people that want to attack Monday for a couple reasons. A, it's the momentum builder, right? That's where we all kind of launch from. And the other part is, to be very direct, it means you don't hate what you do. People that hate what they do, it messes up their Sunday. Okay. Like they call what do they call it? Sunday scaries or whatever. I mean, for me, it's like, if you're not finding enjoyment out of what you do, then life is just too short. And I'm not even talking big picture. Like, look, of course, greater purpose at work. But that feels North Star for people that aren't in a good spot. I'm just like, hey, can you be at a place that you don't despise going to? Can you be at a place that you don't come home beat up and your family just gets your leftovers? Like that's kind of the piece. This is all work-life integration, work-life harmony. But going back to your question, you're in a defensive environment. To me, that's the outside game. We all try to win this outside game in life. We call it success. We call it achievement. We get trophies if we're good at it, accolades, bravo, your LinkedIn profile, whatever it is. And I think that that's a very slippery slope and a very dangerous game to try to focus on and win, because often the outcome is out of your control. So instead of just trying to win the outside game, I believe that the true separators, the people that can sustain winning, it's not about winning one championship, it's about who can repeat. For me, those are the people that have mastered their inside game. When I talk to leaders everywhere, I say the number one lesson is know who you are. Because when you know who you are and you understand what you stand for and you connect it to how you show up, that all together, the alignment of those three things, what you stand for, how you show up, and who you are, when you connect those dots, that's mastery of the inside game. So to be very specific, I went to a leadership offsite retreat that changed my life. Frankly, before this, none of this transformation had happened for me. I was just climbing ladders and title, money, and responsibilities. I was winning the outside game. I really was, as a sports executive. But then I go to this offsite retreat when I'm at the 49ers. It changed my life. I started to understand my why. I first learned what my core values were. And I probably was the only person at the retreat that on the drive home got obsessed with, these things are cool, but I still don't know what to do on Monday morning. So I got obsessed with how to apply them on Monday. If my why and my values don't connect to my decisions and actions, I'm not going to win in the long game. I'm just not. And so for me, I got really focused on these values. And you mentioned confidence as we were starting off the show. Confidence equals values times action. So everyone can remember that equation. Confidence equals values times action. And the multiplication is the consistency that you do it. So if you know your values and you do them every day, you connect them to your actions every day, you build unshakable confidence. Because when you know who you are and you're placing bets on how you show up through that word. So here's an example. Impact is my number one value. When I ask myself, can I create more impact in the sports industry or outside of these walls? The decision to take a Jerry Maguire leap became easy. I didn't do it blindly. I did it in service of my strongest value. One of my other values is courage. Maybe somebody else out there thinks one of their core values is courage. So let's say you go, you know what? I've been putting off this challenging conversation for a while. I'm going to have that conversation. Not because Paul said, because courage is your core value. And now let's lighten the stakes a little bit. Let's go real light. Joy. What if joy was one of your core values? Awesome. Maybe tonight you cook your favorite meal that would bring you joy. It could be small, it could be medium, it could be big. But I literally started journaling these things of, this is my value, this is how I'm going to put it in action. And that's how I became an extremely confident person. And that's what I coach to other people. Unfortunately, most people don't know their values. Most companies don't live their values. They're just words on the wall. So for me, it wasn't going to the retreat that changed my life. It's getting obsessed with the application of knowing who I was on the inside.
Yeah, I really like that segue, if you will, because often when we do these retreats, people go, they get fired up, man, and they're going to run through a brick wall. And then the word you use, they don't apply it, brother. And that's where it's like, then they get into this constant chase. I'm going to go to the next retreat. I'm going to go to the next thing. And I'm not saying don't do that. I love what you said, which is apply. I want to ask you, brother, before we dive into that even further, you said going from the outside looking in, Paul's this executive. Outside, everything looks great. But what I was hearing is you weren't as fulfilled, man. You weren't
Wow.
That's what I'm hearing. And I'm just, again, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but tell me where your mind, where you were at pre this leadership retreat, not what the outside world saw as in Paul's crushing it, doing the 49er thing, being this big sports executive, but rather, how did you feel?
JM, we're still in the podcast conversation here, but I want to call a quick timeout before I respond to that to give you some massive props, man, because your EQ is sky high. If you took that, which by the way, what you just said is accurate. My fulfillment was on a downward slope. I'll get to that in a second. But for you to pull that out of my response, dude, that's freaking awesome, man, because I didn't say those words. You're kind of reading between the lines. So that shows me that you probably have had your own tensions as well as your own transformations, because until you've gone through that muddy water, you probably don't pick up on those cues. So just wanted to say bravo, man. That's freaking awesome. So here's where I was. Before the retreat, I didn't know anything was broken, so I didn't have anything to fix. Life was good. The whole world applauds the successful sports executive. It's the sexiest book cover in the world. But to make an analogy, I stopped loving reading the book. You know, like it's the supermodel analogy of like, all right, cool. She's hot. Well, do you enjoy the conversation at the dinner table? Because after a while, if you don't, she won't be hot. Right. And so for me, the retreat changed everything, because once I started to understand who I was, that's where the tension came from. I didn't know I was showing up as two different people. I had a work Paul and a personal Paul. And when I put literally the suit and tie on, because that was the attire of the industry, I changed. Not bad, but I morphed into who I thought would best position me to keep climbing a ladder. And when I started to realize who I was, I then started to question, am I climbing the right ladder? And is it leaning against the right wall? And that tension of A, showing up as two different people, B, starting to question the ladder, that's a really tough spot to be in. But I believe that tension of the transition of who you are today and who you want to become and the process to go from here to there, that's transformation. But transformation is going to have a lot of discomfort and it will have tension. But on the other side of that discomfort is growth. And we all know this. Comfort and growth cannot live simultaneously. If you are comfortable, you will not grow. And I got very comfortable, and understanding who I was made me realize I'm no longer challenged. I'm no longer stimulated. My executive coach asked me, what do you love, hate, and tolerate about what you do? And as I answered all three, and she said, go deeper on the love bucket. And I described it. And she said, if you were your boss tomorrow, would that percentage of you loving what you do, which was 10 to 20%, would it go up, down, or sideways? And I said, down. My boss is all strategy, no people. The culture side is what gets me out of bed. And she basically dropped the truth bomb when she asked me, so what are you after? And my whole career was about getting the next job, the next role, the next rung up the ladder. And she made me realize that that's no longer what I wanted.
These are some really powerful questions. She sounds amazing, by the way.
Yeah, she's a dude. She's great, man.
So as she's asking these questions, Paul, because you mentioned often people don't really recognize or embrace their values, right? Like courage, fun, and love are our family values. And I'm pointing to a wall no one can see, but it's over there.
Those are your
And,
three: courage, fun, and
yes,
love. Cool.
correct. And so the reason we have it on a wall is I want my kids, when we sat down, when we as a family decided these are our family values, it makes every decision, as you know, and this is where I'm getting to my question, I promise. It makes every decision, every conversation so much easier because, hey, when you hit your brother, was that out of love? Well, no, but we can really go down those paths so much easier to say we committed to these as our values. This is what we said was most important to us. Am I truly embodying and showing up that way? My question to you, long-winded way of getting there, is how did you really discover yours, Paul? Because if people don't take anything away from my episodes more than this, discovering your values, both as a company, as a family, as a person, I think it's one of the most important, impactful, to use one of yours.
Yeah.
It's one of the most impactful things that you can do for your life is to know exactly who you are, what you stand for, how you want to show up. So what was your process, brother?
Yeah, I'll answer that in two ways. I'll explain what I did at the retreat, and then I'll explain if you don't have access to a retreat, then what do you do? Because if you're listening in, your company might not be hosting a retreat tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't know your values and doesn't mean that you should lose. I want everybody obviously to win. So what I did, the fast pass way of describing it is we call it a lifeline, which is basically a life reflection exercise. It can get very emotional because you go from birth to present day. There's a line horizontally on a sheet of paper. Above the line are positive, below the line are the negative. And so you could be talking about best day of your life above. You could be talking about losing one of your parents below. It literally takes the whole spectrum of the good, the bad, the ugly. And you can imagine, right? For a lot of folks, there's trauma baked into that. For a lot of folks, there's inspiring purpose, but then there's these resurrection stories. There's these rock bottoms. There's these transfer. It's all of the above. So until you really unpack your history, you then start to tell stories, and then you source themes from those stories, and those themes turn out to be your values. So that's what you do. Like if you were to say, Paul, we'd like to do a retreat with you, that's the process I would take you, your team, your company through. That's kind of the long way of doing it. But at a retreat, you should pour into that. Now, the fast pass way, I'll give folks two ways. One is, look, you could easily Google a common list of, I would literally Google the words, common list of core values, and you'll find there's infinite lists. And as long as they're long enough, if it's 50, 100 words or more, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not, you pick a few that resonate with you. You'll look at the word and say, yes, and here's a cool way of thinking about it. So often when I'm doing a workshop, we kick off with what I call the inspire exercise. And what I'll show an audience is the Latin definition of inspire, which is to breathe life into. So I will ask the audience, what is a word that breathes life into you? And then they think of it, they write a word on a sticky tag, they put it on their chest, they start working the room and saying, here's my word, here's why, and we kind of work it. That's kind of how I want you to think about the core value is if you were to just select one from a Google list, does that word breathe life into you? And if the answer is no, then it's not a core value. So yes, this is a little bit of a fast pass, a little bit of a cheat sheet. It's not the most emotional way of doing it. I would argue it may not be as impactful as what I could do at a retreat, but it's still something that's at your fingertips right now. And another resource that I'd love to share with your group, and I know we were probably going to call it out at some point, but on my website, paulepsteinspeaks.com, there's a confidence quiz. And the beauty of the confidence quiz, not only does it give you a confidence score of 1 to 100, but then after, when you get resources on how you build unshakable confidence, in that resource, I literally have a list of values. And so I walk folks through the most common values, and I get you to pick one. I give you a journaling exercise that you can make sure that your values turn into action. So I know that was a lot, but I wanted to give folks A, my process, and B, a free tool and resource through my confidence quiz and the resource after, you can literally find values there. And I don't let you just know your value. I make you put it into action. And to me, the journaling process is the key to putting it into action.
Yeah, I love that. And guys, go check it out. I think you said paulepsteinspeaks.com. Go check it out. I mean, what an amazing resource. And I had a question, but you've really answered it, which is, if I'm low on confidence right now, let's say somebody listening is like, man, I am getting my ass kicked, Paul. I don't feel confident. I don't feel great about my personal life, my professional life. Life sucks right now. And I look at your equation of values times actions. And you said that word several times. And one of the things that I say all the time is you're in complete control of your attitude and your actions. How was yours today? So they do this exercise with you. What do you mean by actions, Paul? What
I love it.
What am I looking for, man?
So let me take you straight to the journaling exercise. And this is all what we just shared, where to find it through the confidence quiz on my website. Here's what you do. So here's the journal. The journal is once a week. And let me back up. What you just described is a person that, unfortunately, like sports, they're going through a losing streak, right? Hey, I'm not happy with my job. My relationship is so, like whatever things they're going through, they're just down in the dumps for whatever reason. And trust me, we've all been there. That's part of being human. And this is what we grow and learn from. So if you're in that state right now, then through this journaling exercise, what I'm really trying to do is give you bite-sized wins. Because even when folks feel broken, you're not broken, but you might feel like it. We're just trying to give bite-sized wins. And so what we do, we choose one value and we sit down at the point in the week where we hit the reset button. So for some, that's Sunday night. For others, Monday morning. Some, it's Friday after work. Whenever that point is, it takes 2 to 3 minutes. You choose that value. And literally what I would walk you through is, here's the sentence. I will live my value of blank by blank. So I will live my value of, fill in the value by, then fill in the action. And so I gave a couple examples earlier, but think about this. If you chose something like happiness, and you say, I will live my value of happiness by, all you need to do in this journaling exercise is choose one teeny tiny action that week that will bring you happiness. That's it. Maybe it is cooking your favorite meal. Maybe it's grabbing coffee with your best friend. Maybe it's watching that movie that you've been putting off because you're grinding at work, but you're like, screw that, man. Like, I'm going to watch my favorite movie. What? It can be small, medium. My recommendation is actually, if you're not feeling like you're on a winning streak, then don't make the action too big because it makes it less likely you're going to do it. I actually want you intentionally to start in the small to medium space. Feel free to start small because here's the psychology behind it. You're creating wins. It's going to feel damn good to do it. And then a week later, you journal again and you commit to one new action and you do it. So now it's kind of like crossing things off a to-do list. There's this chemical reaction inside your body. There's this dopamine that makes you feel like a rock star because you feel productive. You feel like you're making progress. You feel like I'm winning. There's momentum, right? And all of a sudden your attitudes, your energy starts to shift. Here's the psychology and the social science behind it. Anybody that has studied habits or read a book like Atomic Habits or just believes that habits are the game changer of life. Habits typically form, if you do something consistently, in 3 to 4 weeks. So my recommendation is you do this journaling exercise for a minimum of 4 weeks, because now you get past the threshold of when it's no longer just a process, it becomes a habit. You internalize it, you build muscle memory around it. And now what I have seen with all my clients that commit to this journaling exercise is the first week, they only commit to one action. And then the second week, they commit to another. By the third or fourth week, they're doing 3 things with that same value. Then they do 5 things. And because it feels so good, you start to just, it's kind of like, here's a silly analogy. You know, when you buy the yellow car and then you start to see yellow cars everywhere, they were always there, but you didn't pay attention. And that's actually your RAS in your brain. And without getting too geeky about it, the same thing happens with this. When you realize your core value and you start acting on it, And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. It starts to grow. So that's the advice I would give, whether you feel like you're in a broken state or you feel like you're in good state, it's still just as effective. We might just have a different starting point.
Well, all my audience I know just said, wow, I only have to journal once a week, Paul, and I can make these. Like, look, that is beautiful because, again, you took something that is overwhelming to some.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to somebody yesterday. They're like, I just don't know how to journal. So I go through this whole thing. The truth is you made it even more simple. Once a week. My goodness. Let's do it once a week and then let's build on it. Brother, you got a new book coming out, Better Decisions Faster. And then I know there's a subtitle and I don't want to chop it up. So when is this coming up? Congratulations. It's
Thank you.
A wonderful accomplishment. What's the book all about, man? That's awesome.
Yeah, Better Decisions Faster. It's really the 2.0 of my first book, which was The Power of Playing Offense. So Power of Playing Offense was the leadership playbook I never had. But I didn't really think of leadership as a position or a rank, role, title, authority. I thought of it as, well, before you lead others, you got to lead yourself. Leadership starts in the mirror. And every single person listening to this can step into leadership of self any day that they want. And so that the first book was really about basically becoming the best version of yourself at work, at home, in life, but it was very much, it started as business leadership. And then people realized, I think this can actually just help me every day. So that's kind of the evolution of that. But then people kept asking me post speech or in my consulting work or in the coaching work that I do, they would say, Paul, so you wrote a book, The Power of Playing Offense, and you tell us that there's offensive people and defensive people. What's the separator? Like if you had to tell us, if we could do one thing as an organization or as individuals to be offensive minded. And so instead of just giving them a blind answer, I went back into the lab with my team and we really did a ton of research. And we really started to talk to folks that we knew that we said, okay, these are offensive people, offensive teams, offensive cultures. And then we also studied the opposite. And so we started to bubble up themes around awareness, ownership, and intention. But basically, when I distilled it down, I said, hold on, this feels a lot like the way that we make decisions and the way we take action or don't. That's kind of the differentiator. Like people that play offense, they're very, very decisive. And the reason that they continue to, in this case, make better decisions faster is because they're okay with imperfect action. They don't need all the information. They're okay saying there is no failure, there's only learning. And if I succeed, learn, succeed, learn, succeed, learn, how do you lose in the long game? And so getting to the book now, Better Decisions Faster, once I distilled it down, I said, well, whether you take action or not is a decision in and of itself. So now we say, what's wrong with decision making? Because if we audited our past, we could definitely see, think about the job that you chose, the person that you chose, your health decisions for better or worse. Show me your decisions. I'll show you the quality of your life. Period. And so I don't want to sound too dramatic, but that really is true. And so if life is a game of decisions, I said, the problem personally for me and for everybody I've talked to is if I said, what's your process to make decisions? Most people respond with a blank stare and they say, what do you mean? Nobody has a process. And so we step into these critical forks in the road in life and we freeze. We get paralyzed. We lack confidence. We lack conviction. We're not clear. We're stressed. We're anxious. And then it leads to the worst decision, which is indecision. We just do nothing in a lot of cases. So I'm solving for the problem of paralysis by creating what I call the head, heart, hands equation. So this is the application of how we make better decisions faster. Here's the 30 to 60 second masterclass. Your head is your mindset. Your heart is your authenticity. That's your truth. And your hands are action. The equation is head plus heart equals hands. In other words, when deciding whether to use your hands, whether to take action, there's two checkpoints, head and heart. Head means, I think it's a good idea. Heart means, I feel it's a good idea. When they're both on board, just like a traffic signal, green freaking light. Head plus heart equals green. When neither is on board, red light. One is on board, yellow. I wrote the book to fill your life with more green lights. Now that you have awareness, stop running reds. No head, no heart, no action. Bust a Yui. And most importantly, here's the playbook for how to navigate the messy middle of yellow. That's better decisions faster via the head, heart, hands equation.
It's absolutely beautiful because look, you don't question when you're clear on what you're doing. I don't care how hard the decision is to cut someone out of your life, to set a boundary. When you're clear on who you are, it's not even a question. It's a question for everyone else. I think that's beautiful. And you beat me to it. I have to ask this because this was a topic that was brought up that I wanted to talk about for sure. Overcoming decision fatigue and indecision in business and life. And you may have just briefly touched on it, but I feel like people do feel tired, man. They're like,
yeah,
every day I have to make a decision of what I'm going to, how I'm going to do my hair, put on clothes, kids, the breakfast, all the things that happen. How do we simplify life, Paul? Because I am all about helping people not have this decision fatigue.
Well, can I say this? In my space of thought leadership, they say we are most equipped to help the person that we once were. I write books for what Paul needed 5 to 10 years ago. Okay. I deliver speeches that Paul needed to hear at some point in his life. So I am no better. I just am very acute at picking up the lessons and the insights from the good and the bad, and then curating them into thoughts that I can deliver in many ways. So that's kind of the quick piece. To get back to your question, I too have struggled mightily with decision fatigue. I've struggled with decision overwhelm. I've struggled with indecision and paralysis. So when I say I wrote the playbook on this, it's only because I've really got obsessed about this is a pain point, not just for me, but for a lot of people. So now if it's pain and if it's a problem, what's the solution? And nobody else is creating the solution. So I might as well create the solution. And that's why the equation is so key. Had I just written a book and said, go make better decisions faster, and here's some inspiring stories of some great decisions, you'd say, awesome. This is how the person turned their life around after being in prison. This is how the person made better health decision because they were diabetic. This is how the person got out of a rocky, abusive marriage, and now they are happily ever after. That's inspiring. But what do you do with that information? That's where I think a lot of literature lacks, is like, dude, what do I do on Monday morning? What do I do? So for me, the head, heart, hands equation, because let me zoom out. Do you know, JM, that today, you, myself, each person listening, each of us is going to make 35,000 decisions a day. Did you know that?
I did not. That's remarkable.
35,000, dude. Now, I did not write the book to use the head, heart, hands equation 35,000 times. You don't have enough time in the day. I wrote it for those critical A versus B's, right? Those in or out, like team, do I hire or fire, strategy A or B, relationship, am I in or out? Like, where do I spend my time on X or Y? Like kind of those binary things, which those we have a handful at most a day. But I bring up the 35,000 because a lot of the fatigue and overwhelm comes from we subconsciously run so many decisions in the back burner and we get tired. And then we don't have the energy or the capacity at the critical forks in the road to say, now let me focus on this one. We're just so fatigued. We're like, screw it, man, just pull the trigger. Or I'm too tired to pull the trigger. So for me, the head, heart, hands equation, it helps overcome the fatigue and the overwhelm because I'm giving you a 5 to 10 second process, not to get to the finish line, but to attach a color to it. Within 5 to 10 seconds, you'll get to green, yellow, or red. And now it's a starting point. Green means we take action, we move forward, whatever that means in the context. Red is don't do it or stop doing it. And yellow is you solve for the gap. And yellow is the trickier place. And that's where it would take a much longer conversation and or reading the book to really unpack yellow lights. Because frankly, I think 80% of decisions end up being yellow. So if you don't have mastery of the yellow, you're going to be in trouble. And so, when you ask how to overcome decision fatigue and overwhelm, now that we have a simple, fast process on how to make these critical decisions, the head, heart, hands equation is the solve for decision fatigue and overwhelm.
Yeah, no, well, go check out the book, because you're getting like a glimpse into what this is. But here's what I will say. You simplify everything. I don't say that to many guests, honestly, because most guests don't, honestly. They make it complex. Everything you've done is you've taken it down and simplified it. And it's one of the greatest compliments I can give someone, because I think that's brilliant. I can't believe how fast this has gone by. I want to give you an opportunity. If there's anything I didn't ask you, Paul, that you're like, we need to share this with the audience, JM, you should have known to ask this. Anything you want to make sure to leave before we kind of wrap up?
No, I think I'll end where we started, which is this is a game of confidence. And let me also separate a couple of things here. There's self-confidence and self-worth. And I think that's an important distinction, because with self-confidence, that's when we win a lot, to use some of our language here in this community. When we win a lot, we become more confident. The danger in that, though, is what if you're not winning? Like for Paul, if he has a bad 4 months in business, which, hey, it can happen, right? Anything's possible. The market conditions with COVID, I could no longer be a speaker unless I was willing to do it virtually. Like, that's an example. The question is, did my confidence get shattered or not? And the fact that it didn't, it was because my self-worth was high. And so I think we need to separate out, like, confidence kind of wanes a lot with results and outcomes, which is why I say, make your confidence not about results and outcomes, make it about how consistently you act on your values. Going back to what we talked about earlier. And then the self-worth, yes, of course, like that's where it's like, hey, we don't need that external validation. It's like, dude, like we are enough, and we've all struggled with it. Trust me, you would think that being in the NFL and NBA and being around the world's top athletes, they're getting an A+ in confidence and self-worth. Heck no, man. Heck no. What didn't lack in those environments was gifts and talents. They're the top 0.1% of what they do. And it still didn't come with the automatic confidence and self-worth. So if you're struggling in either of those areas, I would say with self-worth, a lot of that, frankly, is I invest in coaches. Not only I am a coach, I have 3 different coaches for different things in my life. And that would be my recommendation for self-worth. For confidence, we already shouted it out, but I'll say it again. On my website, paulepsteinspeaks.com, hit that confidence quiz. Not only does it tell you how confident you are today, but it gives you resources to improve that confidence over time. So that's a gift from the heart that I just wanted to say. This has just been such a pleasure to rap with you, JM, and the way that you are pulling me in. This is honestly one of my favorite podcast interviews I've ever had. And I mean that from my heart.
I appreciate that, brother. And it is 100% reciprocal. I loved having you on. I really, I got so much from this interview, and that's when I know this is so good. I know you talked about the website. Is there anywhere else, if people wanted to connect with you online, find the book, whatever is happening, Paul, is that the best place to go, is to your website, or connect with you otherwise?
Yeah, I would say my website, anything and everything can be found on my website, paulepsteinspeaks.com. And then socially, if that's more your vibe, LinkedIn and Instagram are the 2 where I'm most active. But just go to my website, and that's your one-stop shop.
Brother, you really simplify so many amazingly important issues, and I appreciate it. I'm excited to read the book. Congratulations. Important topics, and thank you for bringing it in such a relatable way for everybody to say, I can do this too. I think it was really well done, brother. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, JM.
You guys, look, he gave you the playbook. He gave you, this is how to have green lights. This is how to go find your values. I mean, he simplified so much. I am so impressed by what he said. Go check out the book. Share this, because I promise everyone that you know can get a ton of value from what Paul had to say. This was a brilliant episode. Make sure to share it with everyone you know. And until next time, remember, let's keep getting better every day. I appreciate y'all. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, JM Ryerson.